What would you do if the very children you raised with your own blood and sweat looked at you not as a father, but as a bank waiting to be emptied? That question has haunted me every sleepless night, gnawing at the edges of my soul. My name is Leonard Hayes. I am 71 years old, a retired machinist from a small town in Illinois. And I never imagined that the people I loved most could cut me deeper than any stranger ever could. It began on an icy February morning, when the world outside was frozen solid, yet nothing felt colder than the silence inside my own kitchen. A plain envelope, official-looking, arrived in the mail. Inside it was the kind of letter that makes your hands shake and your knees weak. My older brother, Walter, who had lived a quiet life after moving to the East Coast, had passed away months earlier, unknown to nearly everyone. He had been saving and investing for decades, and in that envelope lay proof that he left me everything: stocks, bonds, and cash worth just over $1 million. I stared at the paper until the words blurred. $1 million. I thought of my children, Rachel, my eldest daughter with her sharp tongue and endless demands, Mark, my middle child, always so sure he was smarter than everyone else, and Ethan, my youngest, whose reckless habits had drained more of my savings than I dared to count. Once upon a time, I would have shouted the news, gathered them around, and shared every dollar gladly. But I knew them now. Their voices echoed in my memory, asking for loans, favors, rescues, rarely asking how I was holding up since their mother, Clara, passed away. That morning, I decided on something I never believed I would do to my own flesh and blood. I would keep the inheritance a secret. I would test them quietly, carefully, to see if even a shred of love remained in their hearts, or if money had already replaced me. I live in a small yellow house at the edge of Maple Ridge, Illinois. The yard is quiet. Elm trees creak when the wind moves. In the morning, I make black coffee and 2 slices of toast. One plate sits empty across from me. I still set out Clara's blue cup. After breakfast, I walk to the corner for the local paper. The headline is usually budgets or a high school game. I like small news. The steel plant closed years ago. I worked there most of my life. When the plant shut down, the town shrank. Stores went dark. The diner stayed. Gloria owns it and keeps the lights warm. She fills my cup without being asked. My children live 30 minutes away. We talk. But many calls begin with a problem to solve. Rachel is my eldest. She runs a staging business for real estate. She can make a tired apartment look like a dream. Her voice can cut when stress climbs. She says she is practical. She means she is tired of carrying everyone. Mark works in technology. He likes plans and charts and the sound of his own certainty. He thinks I should do everything by a spreadsheet. He says risk is math. He forgets that grief does not move in neat columns. Since Clara passed, he calls with solutions. He does not always ask what the problem is first. Ethan is the youngest. He is quick to laugh and slow to watch the calendar. He plays guitar at a bar near the river. People like him. Too many people ask him to stay for one more drink. He makes me smile. Then he asks for a small loan. He says he will pay me back on Friday. Friday takes its time. On Sundays, I sit in the 3rd pew at St. Andrew's. I light a candle for Clara. I do not pray for money. I pray for the strength to love my family with clear eyes. After the service, a neighbor named Mrs. Porter gives me cookies and a story. I listen again. The house carries Clara in every corner. The screen door sticks the way it did when she would call me in from the yard. Her recipe cards sit in a tin box on the counter. I open it to read her notes. Use butter. Let the batter rest. Serve while warm. When I cook, I set a second fork without thinking. Then I put it back in the drawer. There are good moments with my children. Last summer, Rachel brought photos and we sat on the floor. Mark fixed the loose railing and refused gas money. Ethan cleaned the gutters and sang until the neighbor dog howled. We ate cold pizza. We were a family then. It is the other days that pull at me. The days when the phone rings and the first word is Dad. I need. The winter, before the letter arrived, I felt the ground shift. Rachel called about a contract that fell through. She needed help for 2 months of rent. I sent what I could. Mark called after that. He said the market dipped and he was caught on margin. I heard fear under the words. I moved money from a certificate to help him. Ethan came next. He held his hat like a child. He said his car needed a new alternator. I drove him to the shop and paid. Money is not the point of my life. It is a mirror that shows the truth. I live on my pension and careful savings. I am fine. I have heat. I have medicine. I have a roof that does not leak. What I do not have is company at the end of the day. When the envelope from Harrisburg came, I did not call anyone. I boiled water for tea and watched the kettle shake. I pictured the faces of my children. Rachel with her planner. Mark with his charts. Ethan with that crooked smile he uses when he needs help. I asked a question I did not like. If I share this news, will I be a father or an account to draw from? That week I kept my routine. Coffee, walk, diner, church on Wednesday for the pantry. I stayed busy with small jobs. I replaced a gasket under the sink. I oiled the hinges on the back door. The envelope sat on the table under a book. Every time I passed, I felt it pull like a tide. At night, I sat in Clara's chair and spoke as if she were in the next room. I told her about the inheritance. I told her I wanted to do right by the children and by the life we built. I asked what she would do. The answer was the soft hum of the old refrigerator. It has never failed me. I decided to wait and watch. Not for tricks, for patterns, for proof of where the heart sits when no one is looking. I told myself that a week would be enough. A week to see who calls first, without a need attached. A week to see who asks about the doctor. A week to see who remembers the day Clara left us. A week can tell the truth that a year of excuses cannot hide. It was a Wednesday afternoon when Rachel called. Her voice tight. The kind of tone she used when her patience had already worn thin. I had just poured myself a cup of coffee. The steam fogging my glasses. When the phone buzzed on the counter, "Dad," she said without so much as a hello. The bank denied my extension. I need $2,000 by Friday, or I'll lose the lease on the office space. Matter. I held the mug with both hands, steadying myself. Rachel, 2,000 is not pocket change. You said last month that things were stabilizing. In a millennium, her sigh cracked through the line. It was. Then 2 clients pulled out. You don't understand. Dad. This is my livelihood. If you want me to keep building something real, I can't have landlords breathing down my neck. You always told us to fight for our future. Well, this is me fighting. In a millennium, I didn't argue, but my chest tightened. She wasn't asking if I was able. She was assuming I should. That night I sat in Clara's chair, staring at the checkbook, thinking about the letter folded in my drawer upstairs. The inheritance was a shadow over every request now. 2 days later, Mark showed up unannounced. He wore his crisp jacket, the one he always put on when he wanted to project authority. He placed a binder on my kitchen table as if he were making a sales pitch. Dad, I've been reviewing your accounts, savings bonds, that pension, the small certificates you've tucked away. You're not earning anything. Inflation is chewing it all up. I raised an eyebrow. Since when do you have access to my accounts? He tapped the binder. You left statements lying around the last time I visited. I couldn't help but notice. Look, you need to be smarter. If you let me handle this, I can restructure everything. We're talking growth, not survival. You'd thank me later. To I use then. I wanted to ask him why he was really here. Was it my well-being? Or the scent of money he could manage like one of his projects? His eyes flicked to the cupboards, the chipped paint, the smallness of the life I had chosen. I felt like he was measuring me, not the woodwork. On Saturday, Ethan came by, guitar slung on his back, smelling faintly of cigarettes and cheap beer. He kissed my forehead, dropped onto the couch, and grinned. Dad, you wouldn't believe it. We had the crowd going wild last night. But then my car broke down on the way back. Transmission. Maybe. The mechanic says 1,500. Minimum. I hate to ask. But. His smile faltered. Could you help me out? I looked at his hands. Calloused from strings. Trembling a little from nerves. I loved that boy. Reckless as he was. But the rhythm was the same. A request wrapped in charm. He talked about music, about dreams, about someday paying me back. I listened, but the number 1,500 beat in my ears. By Sunday night, I felt the weight of 3 children pressing against me, each with their own angle, their own crisis. Rachel, demanding. Mark calculating. Ethan pleading. It might have been coincidence, but my gut said otherwise. Clara used to warn me that money reveals more than it creates. She was right. They didn't know about the inheritance, but their voices told me enough. Each one had placed me at the center of their financial storms. Not one had asked how I was holding up through the long winter alone. Not one had asked if I was eating well, if the pain in my knees had worsened, if the nights without Clara were heavier this year than the last. That was the moment I felt it. A shift. Not just requests, but expectations, as if my role as father had narrowed into one single function. Provider. Risqueur. Financier. They spoke of their futures as if my only duty was to bankroll them. Love had been replaced by balance sheets. Care by calculation. I walked into the bedroom and opened the drawer where the envelope still waited. The paper inside whispered of choices, of power, of danger. My hands hovered over it. But I didn't pull it out. Not yet. Instead, I whispered into the darkness. If you can hear me, give me the strength to see the truth. I need to know if they love me, or only what I can give them. The silence that answered me was heavier than any sound. And in that silence, I knew the tests had already begun, even if my children didn't realize it. Rachel asked me to meet her at the staging warehouse on the south edge of town. The place smelled like lemon and dust. Lamps stood in rows. Sofas wore plastic covers that crackled when we walked. She kissed my cheek, set a clipboard on a tall table, and pushed a pen toward me. Dad, thanks for coming. I just need your signature. It is a standard guarantor form. What is it for? I asked. The lease. The landlord wants a stronger profile. If I miss a month, you would cover the rent, only for a short time. I read the page. My name, my address, a line that said full liability, another that said the house could be attached. A slow ache opened in my chest. Rachel, this puts my home at risk. She kept her eyes on the clipboard. It is just until spring. If I lose this space, I lose my clients. I set the pen down. Do you remember when your mother and I almost lost our first apartment? We sold the television and cooked rice for a month. We did not ask your grandparents to risk their house. Times are different, she said. We do not need lectures. We need leverage. You live alone. You have savings. The house is paid off. The words hit like cold water, as if I were a vault with feet. I cannot sign, I said softly. You cannot, or you will not. I will not risk the house. I told my landlord you would sign. She said, he expects it today. I said you always come through. You do not want me to look like a liar. Do you? You promised my signature without asking me. I promised because you are my father. Family helps family. Family does not take without asking. I said. Family asks how the other is doing before dropping a form on the table. She laughed once. Sharp. How are you? Then, are you fine? Can we be adults now? The room went quiet. I could hear a refrigerator hum. I looked at the paper. The lines swam. I counted to 5. I love you. I will help with groceries. I will help with a month of rent if I can. But I will not sign a document that can take the roof over my head. Her cheeks flushed. Mark was right. She said, you are stuck in old rules. You hoard your money. Maybe you never planned to help me at all. Hoard. Pretend. The words landed like stones. I am leaving. I said, we can talk tomorrow. She grabbed my sleeve. If you walk out, do not call when I pack up my office. And do not come crying when no one visits you in that big quiet house. I freed my arm. I tried to see the child who once slept on my chest in a storm. I could not find her in the woman before me. I turned to go. A cardboard box sat by the door. A quilt lay folded inside it. Blue and white. Clara stitched it the winter. Rachel broke her wrist. Mary's star. She called the pattern. Why is that here? I asked. Oh, the quilt. A client wanted something with a story. It stages well. You took your mother's quilt without asking. Dad. It is a blanket. We can bring it back. Do not make this dramatic. I lifted the quilt. It smelled faintly of cedar from the chest at home. My hands shook. I set it over my forearm the way Clara did when she smoothed a bed. You may borrow a chair or a lamp. I said. You do not take what holds a family together. Rachel stared at me, then slid the form off the table and tore it in half. Fine. Keep your house. Keep your relics. I will figure it out. She walked away down the aisle of lamps. Plastic covers whispered as she passed. I stood by the door with the quilt in my arms. My throat hurt the way it does when you try not to cry in public. Outside. The wind cut across the lot. The sky was a flat, pale gray. I folded the quilt and laid it on the passenger seat. I sat with my hands on the wheel and my eyes closed. I told myself it was only a form, only a box, only words spoken in a bad hour. But the truth had already risen. My daughter had promised my name to a stranger. She had turned pieces of our life into props. She had counted my love as a resource and my silence as consent. I drove home. I carried the quilt to the bedroom and placed it back in the cedar chest. The lid closed with a soft sound. It felt like a goodbye to a way of being a father that did not protect anyone. In the kitchen, the kettle clicked off. I poured hot water over a tea bag. The house was very quiet. I said Clara out loud. The name steadied me like a post in deep snow. That night I did not sleep. The envelope on the dresser seemed to glow. I saw the corner lift. I knew I had crossed a line. I would not be guided by fear of being alone. I would be guided by truth. The first cut had been made. It was small but deep. It told me what I did not want to know. It told me I was not seen as a man who could hurt. It told me I was a door to be used when weather turned rough. It told me the tests could not wait any longer. I stood at the window and watched snow drift under the streetlight. I remembered the night Clara and I brought Rachel home. We promised to keep her warm. Somewhere that promise had thinned. I drew the curtain. The house was still cold the next morning when the phone rang. It was Mark. His voice carried that controlled patience. The kind he used with clients when he thought they were slow to follow his reasoning. Dad, I've been thinking about what we discussed. I want to stop by this afternoon. There's something important you need to see. I fun moan. At 2 o'clock, he arrived with a briefcase and a polished smile. He spread charts and prospectuses across my kitchen table like a man unveiling treasure maps. This is where your money should be. High-yield mutuals. Diversified portfolios. Cryptocurrency still has a place if you move fast. You don't want to let opportunity slip away. Come to the content. I watched his hands move quickly across the papers. He wasn't asking about my health, or if I was sleeping, or if the arthritis had worsened with the cold. He was searching for numbers, balances, accounts. His eyes lit when I mentioned old bonds, dimmed when I admitted I kept savings in a simple account. Dad, you're wasting potential, he said, tapping the page with his pen. You don't understand how money works in this era. Let me take control. I'll manage everything for you. You'll thank me when you see the returns. He stutter, control. The word hung in the air. He called it help, but it tasted like power. I thought of the letter upstairs in my drawer. The inheritance no one knew about. $1 million waiting like a storm cloud. I folded the papers back toward him. I'll think about it, I said. That night, Ethan came by. Late, his breath smoky with beer. Dad, my gig money's gone. The car's dead, again. I just need a few hundred to keep things rolling. His smile was thin, practiced. When I hesitated, his eyes darted around the kitchen, landing on the cedar chest in the hallway as though even the memories inside could be turned into cash. And Rachel, she didn't call to apologize. She sent a text instead. Short and cutting. Hope you enjoy the quilt more than seeing your daughter succeed. The three of them. Different voices. Different tones. But all circling the same center. I was no longer father, mentor, or comfort. I was credit, collateral, chance. Clara's words echoed in my head. Money shows people for who they are, not who they pretend to be. In an exodus, that night I opened the drawer and spread the letter on the table. The numbers on the page glared up at me. I could hide this forever. I could spend quietly. Let them circle. Let the truth rot us from within. Or I could turn it into a mirror and see what my children truly were. So I made my choice. I would test them. Not out of spite. Out of need. If love still lived in their hearts. I wanted to see it before I left this earth. If greed had eaten it away. I needed to know, while I still had breath to change my will. I took out a notebook and began to write. 3 names. 3 different trials. Each one designed to reveal whether my children loved me, or only what I could give. I underlined the first page. The tests begin tomorrow. I chose something simple. A request any loving child could meet without planning or cost. I would ask for a ride and a little time. I would ask for company when fear pressed on my chest. That morning I brewed coffee I could not finish. My hands shook. Not from illness, from the thought that I might be proved right. I set the letter back in its drawer and dialed Rachel at her office. Hi, Dad. I am swamped, she said, voice bright and thin. Can this wait? I forced a shallow breath. I am feeling lightheaded. The clinic wants me seen by a heart doctor in Springfield this afternoon. I do not trust my driving right now. Could you take me? Or meet me and ride with me? It would help. Silence held the line for 3 seconds. Then the click of keys. The sound of a calendar opening. Springfield is an hour and change, she said. Today is stacked. I have a noon showing and a late install. Can you call an Uber? I will send you the cost later. I can pay for a taxi, I said. I do not want to sit alone in a waiting room if the news is bad. Rachel exhaled. Dad, I get it. But I cannot lose clients. It is quarter end. Could you ask Mark? Or Ethan? They have more flex than I do. I closed my eyes and stayed with the script. Mark is in meetings. Ethan plays a lunch set at the river bar. I need you. Please. More typing. A sigh. Okay. If I leave by 1, I could drop you and head back. But I cannot wait at the clinic. Not for hours. If you are admitted, you will be in good hands. What if I faint in the lobby? Dad. Please. Do not make me choose between a job and you. You always taught us to honor our commitments. I am doing that. Honor. The word pinched. I swallowed. If I drive myself and something happens on the highway, that will also make you late. She paused. Her tone softened half an inch. I love you. I will check in by text. Send me the clinic name. I will try to swing by after my install if it ends early. Thank you, I said. I will manage it. We hung up. The kitchen hummed. The house felt light and fragile. Like glass. I stood by the sink until the faucet stopped dripping. Then I dialed Mark. He answered on the first ring. Brisk and warm. Dad. I was about to call you. Quick question about your utilities. Then he heard my breath. Are you okay? I explained the same story. Dizziness. Clinic. Springfield. A ride would help. His shoes clicked over tile. He must have been pacing a conference hall. I want to help, he said. But I am on deck for a pitch at 2. If I bail, the team eats the loss. You know leadership. It is not about being liked. It is about showing up. Can I book a car and handle everything from my end? I can track the trip and send the doctor my info. I can approve tests. I can talk to billing. I do not need command. I said. I need a son beside me. There was a long quiet. Then he said, I cannot today. I will FaceTime you before the appointment. We can stay on the call while you wait. I thanked him and ended the call. My throat felt raw. I took my coat from the hook and set it down again. I called Ethan. He picked up from somewhere loud. A blender roared behind him. Hey. Dad. You good? You need tickets for tonight. We got a late show. I told him the plan. He said a word I do not like to hear and lowered his voice. I am sorry. I am on shift until 3, and the manager is strict. If I leave, they cut me from the weekend roster. It is how I pay rent. Can I cover your cab and bring dinner after? I could stay the night. I will sleep on the couch. I pictured him carrying a paper sack through my door near dusk. I pictured him joking to keep the fear down. I said, all right. He promised to call at noon. I set my hands flat on the table. My tests were small on purpose. Human-sized. A ride. A seat in a waiting room. A warm presence in a cold place. The answers had been clean. No from duty. No from leadership. No from a schedule. Love may be patient and kind. It is also inconvenient. It often costs an hour you plan to spend elsewhere. I drove myself to the clinic. The sky hung low with gray. I parked crooked and had to back up and try again. Inside. The light was bright and the floor smelled like antiseptic. The nurse took my blood pressure and asked if I had a ride home. I said yes before my mouth could shape the truth. The exam took 20 minutes. The doctor said my heart was steady. He wanted labs next week. He asked if someone could stay with me tonight. I said my son was bringing dinner. It was not a lie. It was just not the whole of what I wanted. I waited on a metal chair near the door. Couples moved past together. A woman patted her husband's knee. A grandson pushed his grandfather in a wheelchair and told him about a funny dog in the parking lot. The door opened and cold air rushed in. I held my coat on my lap and watched the clock grieve its way around the face. When I stepped back outside, the wind cut hard. I drove home in the slow lane. The radio murmured a game I did. The morning after the clinic visit, I woke before dawn. The letter waited in the drawer like a weight pressing on my chest. I pulled out the notebook and wrote the words. Then I sat at the kitchen table and planned. If money had become the measure, then I would let money speak and watch how my children answered. I started with Rachel. I called her mid-morning, when she was likely between showings. She answered briskly, still clipped from our last encounter. I softened my voice. Rachel, I misplaced my wallet yesterday. Somewhere between the clinic and home. I had nearly $300 in it, along with my license. I feel foolish. I cannot cover groceries until next week. Could you lend me some cash just until the pension check clears? There was silence. Then the sharp tap of her fingernails on the steering wheel. Dad, 300 is not much. But my accounts are tight after the lease mess. I could wire you 50, maybe 75, but not more. That at mouth 3 down, I pictured her manicured nails, the gold watch she wore, the new phone she never seemed to put down. Even 100 would help, I said quietly. Her tone sharpened. You always said you budget. How does a lost wallet ruin everything? Dad, be responsible. I cannot keep rescuing you. That at mouth 3 down, the line went dead heavy. I thanked her, promised to manage, and hung up. That afternoon, I phoned Mark. He was still at work but lowered his voice. You sound rough. Dad, what's going on? I repeated the same story. His response was immediate, calculating. Losing 300 is nothing compared to what I could grow for you. Dad, let me take over your finances formally. If you give me power of attorney, I can secure credit cards, investment accounts, liquidity lines. You would never need to worry about losing a wallet again. Good heavens, I interrupted. I asked for a short loan. Mark, just until the pension check. All there a brevet. He hesitated. Of course. I can wire 100 tonight. But the bigger issue is management. You should not be handling cash at your age. All there a brevet. The words tightened in my ears. At your age. I bit back a reply. I thanked him and ended the call. In the evening, when the sky went purple and the street lamps hummed, Ethan came by. He dropped onto the couch, guitar case clattering against the wall. He smiled his tired grin. Dad, I heard about the wallet. I do not have much. But here, he pulled crumpled bills from his pocket, counted 60, then added 20 more. It's what I made last night. Keep it. No rush. Anyone to count. It is not half. Anyone to the way. Has why then? I stared at the worn bills in my hand. Ethan, this is your rent. Anyone to count. It is not half. Anyone to the way. Has why then? He shrugged. I'll figure it out. You always did for us. Let me do this once. Anyone to count. It is not half. Anyone to the way. Has why then? We ate soup together that night. He talked about the set list for Friday. About a new song he was writing. He never asked when I would repay him. After he left, I opened the notebook and wrote. Rachel offered excuses. Mark offered control. Ethan offered what little he had. I closed the book and sat in the silence. The pattern was sharp now. One child gave me conditions. One child gave me chains. Only one gave me love, wrapped in worn bills, and trust. The tests were working. They cut me open. But they showed the truth that words alone could never reveal. By the third week, the letter upstairs felt alive. I could sense it even when I tried to rest. It was time for the last test. The sharpest edge. If I carried this secret to my grave, my children would never face themselves. So I built one more trial, cruel in its honesty. I phoned each of them on a gray Tuesday morning. I told them a story, The doctor wants me to schedule minor surgery. It is not urgent, but the recovery could be rough. I will need someone to stay with me for a week. The nurse said, family support makes all the difference. I paused, then added softly, it might be hard for me to manage meals and stairs alone. Hansedin, Rachel answered first. Her voice was sweet, but thin. Dad, you know I care. But a whole week is impossible. My company is at a turning point. If I leave, I lose clients. Maybe I could drop by on Saturday for a few hours. You could hire a nurse for the rest. Insurance should cover it. Hansedin, her words carried politeness like a mask. I thanked her, set the phone down, and wrote in the notebook, visit on Saturday. No more. Mark called during his lunch break. Dad, we should be practical. You cannot rely on us for this kind of care. What if it happens again? I can research assisted living, or a live-in aid. It is safer. I can handle the contracts and finances. You will be comfortable. I listened. I thought of Clara's hands smoothing sheets, of the warmth of a family home. I am asking for presence. Mark, not placement. There is not 80. He cleared his throat. Presence is fragile. Structure is real. Trust me. Dad, there is not 80. I thanked him, hung up, and wrote, structure without presence. Ethan arrived that evening without calling first. He carried a grocery bag of canned soup and tea. His eyes were serious. I got your message. If you need someone here, I will stay. I can cancel gigs. The band will live. I will sleep on the couch. You kept us alive when Mom was sick. Now it is my turn. He relieved half. I tried to protest, but he waved me off. I will bring my guitar. We will make the place less quiet. He relieved half. He stayed for hours, fixing a loose hinge on the cabinet, whistling softly. Before leaving, he said, tell me when the surgery is. I will be here the whole time, even if it takes more than a week. He relieved half. When the door closed behind him, the house was still, but not empty. His words lingered like warmth in the air. That night I opened the notebook. Test 3 complete. Rachel chose business. Mark chose control. Ethan chose love. I closed the book, but I did not sleep. The decision ahead was heavy. I had seen enough. The final truth was clear, and it cut clean through me. I was a father to 3, but only one still knew how to be a son. The night after the last test, I could not sleep. The house held its breath. I set a glass of water on the nightstand and watched the dark turn thin. At dawn, I gave up and walked to the diner. Gloria saw my face and poured coffee without a word. She left a slice of toast on the saucer the way Clara used to do on Sundays. When I stood to leave, a gentle voice came from behind me. Mr. Hayes, you look unsteady. It was Mrs. Porter from the third pew. She touched my sleeve the way kind people ask permission. Are you all right? I made a small joke. She did not laugh. Wait here, she said. My granddaughter is nearby. She is in her last year of nursing at the community college. Let her take a look at you. 10 minutes later, a young woman hurried through the door, cheeks pink from the cold. Grandma, you scared me. Then she saw me. I am Lily Porter. We have waved across the hedge. May I sit? She sat and asked simple questions. Any chest pain, dizziness, sleep, food. She watched my hands as much as my words. She had the steady eyes of someone who listens for a living. I am fine, I said. Then my throat closed. I am tired. That was closer to the truth. She nodded. Fatigue can make anything feel heavier. Do you have someone checking on you today? I shook my head. She looked at her watch. I have class at 2. I can stop by your house now and make sure you eat. No charge. Mr. Hayes, I owe you more than a visit. You do not owe me anything, I said. She smiled. You fixed our furnace the winter Grandpa passed. You would not take money. We would have frozen without you. I remember the smell of the metal when you changed the belt. I was 8 and wore striped socks. You gave me a peppermint and told me to hold the flashlight. The memory unfolded with her words. Striped socks. Peppermint. A small hand steady on the light. I swallowed and nodded. At home, she moved through my kitchen with quiet purpose. She made oatmeal and tea. She checked the dates on my medicine. She set a row of pills in a plastic tray and wrote the days in black marker. She taped a note to the fridge with the clinic number and her own. She did not comment on the silence of the spare room. She did not look toward the cedar chest. I tried to pay her for her time. She shook her head. If you insist, you can taste my soup next week and tell me if it needs more time. That is the only fee. She asked about Clara. I told her about the blue cup and the recipe cards, and the way Clara would hum when she folded sheets. Lily listened with her chin in her hand. She did not rush the pauses. When I faltered, she filled the kettle and set it to heat. She opened a window and let in the dry winter light. This house needs breathing, she said softly. You should too. On her way out, she looked at the photos on the hallway wall. She touched the frame of our wedding picture as if respect could travel through glass. I will come by after class, she said. We can walk around the block if the wind is kind. She came back that afternoon with a small bag of groceries. Apples, eggs, a lemon. She cooked enough soup for 2 dinners and left it in the fridge with tape labels that read tonight and tomorrow. We walked once around the block. She watched my steps without making a show of it. When I grew short of breath, she turned the talk to easy subjects. A stray cat that lived behind the library. The best bench in the park for sunsets. She laughed at small things and let silence be large when it needed to be. The next day she returned with a plastic tub full of office supplies. She laid out a calendar on my table and wrote the clinic date in neat blue letters. She added her class times and the hours she could stop by. She wrote Rachel, Mark, and Ethan down the side and asked for their numbers. If you do not mind, sir, I will keep the list. Someone should pick up if I cannot. I handed her the numbers and did not explain why my hand trembled. On Thursday, she insisted on driving me to the lab for blood work. She waited while I sat in a chair that smelled like alcohol and old magazines. She did not scroll her phone. She watched the door and looked up when a nurse called my name. On the way home, she tuned the radio to an oldies station and sang without shame. Her voice was clean and warm. It sounded like a spring morning feels when you first open the window. At the curb, she set the parking brake and turned to me. You have given this town many quiet favors. Let someone return one. I do not know what to say. I told her. Say you will let me keep showing up. She said. Sometimes showing up is all we can do. It is also most of what matters. In the evening, Ethan arrived with his guitar and a bag of groceries. He found Lily at the stove and raised his eyebrows. She wiped her hands and introduced herself. Within minutes, they were trading recipes and band names. Ethan washed dishes without being asked. Lily dried. I sat at the table and watched light move across the counter as the day folded itself down. After dinner, Lily set a glass of water by my chair. Ethan tuned his guitar and played a slow song I did not recognize. Lily hummed along. The house changed shape. It felt inhabited again. I saw Clara in the way the two of them moved around each other without knocking elbows. Before Lily left, she slipped a card into my hand. It was small and homemade. On the back, she had written a single sentence. If you are awake at night, you can call me. If I sleep, I will call back at dawn. I promise. After she went home, Ethan leaned against the doorframe and looked at me. She is good people. Dad. You should let her help. I opened the notebook after he left. I did not write test or score. I wrote a different word. Gift. Then I sat very still and let the quiet be kind for once. For the first time in months, I slept through the night. I dreamed of a little girl with striped socks holding a flashlight steady while I worked. The beam did not shake. The light stayed where it needed to be. When I woke, the world looked a shade brighter. The house breathed. So did I. By the time the leaves began to fall in earnest, I knew the path ahead. The tests had stripped away illusion. Rachel saw me as a safety net she could stretch until it snapped. Mark saw me as an account to manage, a project to control. Ethan saw me as his father, flawed and tired, but still worthy of care. And Lily, who owed me nothing, had shown more love in a week than my own children in years. I sat at the kitchen table one morning, with the letter spread open beside my notebook. The numbers glared, but they no longer frightened me. I lifted my pen and began to write a will. Simple lines, direct as the beams in the ceiling above me. The house and half of the inheritance would go to Ethan. The remainder I would divide between Lily's scholarship fund and the church pantry that had kept more neighbors alive than anyone admitted. I left Rachel and Mark a single dollar each, a gesture the lawyer told me would make the papers airtight. It was not spite. It was truth recorded in ink. That afternoon, I drove to the attorney's office downtown. The young clerk raised his brows when I handed him the draft. "Are you certain, sir? These are drastic divisions. In its section, I am certain," I said. "This reflects not anger, but what has been revealed." "En Wamos," he nodded and drew up the formal documents. I signed each page with steady strokes. When the last signature dried, I felt lighter, as if Clara had touched my shoulder and whispered that I had finally protected the right child. I stopped at the cemetery before heading home. The grass was damp, the headstones glistening with dew. I knelt by Clara's marker and laid a hand on the cold stone. I did what we always promised. I told her, we said we would reward love, not greed. We said we would guard the one who guards us. I hope you approve. The wind stirred through the branches as if in answer. When I returned home, I called Ethan. "Son, I want you to come by tonight. Bring your guitar if you like. There's something I need to tell you." His voice caught, uncertain but warm. "I'll be there, Dad. I'll always be there." There, I hung up and looked around the house. The cedar chest, the blue cup, the recipe tin. These objects no longer felt like relics of a closed life. They were heirlooms I could pass on with intention. Not to those who demanded, but to those who cherished. The decision was made. The weight of secrecy shifted. All that remained was the storm of truth. Waiting for the night, I gathered my family and laid everything bare. I invited my children to dinner. I kept the menu simple. Beef stew in a heavy pot. Bread warm from the oven. I set Clara's blue cup at the head of the table and left it empty. Ethan came early and chopped onions while I set out plates. Lily stopped by with fresh parsley. Then she stepped back toward the door. "Do you want me to stay?" she asked. "You are kind," I said. "This is family business, but you are welcome if things turn hard." "I will sit on the porch," she said. "If you need me. Knock on the glass." Rachel arrived first. Her heels clicked down the hall. She looked at the blue cup and lifted a brow. Mark came next with a neat folder under his arm. He shook my hand as if we were in a lobby. The air felt thin. Ethan moved between us with easy talk and set the bread on the table. We bowed our heads. I did not pray for peace. I asked for truth. We ate in short bursts of silence. The stew tasted like the Sundays Clara used to save. When the bowls were empty, I folded my hands and looked at each of my children. "There is something I must tell you," I said. Rachel leaned back. "If this is about the office, I have a plan. I will find a new space. No guilt tonight. Mark opened his folder. If this is about finances, I have models. You can listen and decide. It will take 10 minutes. I held up a hand. No plans. No models. Only facts. I received a letter in winter. My brother left me a large inheritance. I kept it quiet. I needed to know how we stand with one another. I set 3 small tests. A ride to a clinic. A small loan after a lost wallet. A week of care after a minor surgery. I took notes after each call. Ethan went still. Rachel laughed once and stopped. Mark blinked slow as if a slide had changed on a screen. You tested us. Rachel said, your own children. I tested our love. I said, I needed to see what lived in it now. Not 10 years ago. Now. Mark closed his folder and sat sharp. This is a cruel frame. We work. We have lives. You cannot judge us by a day. I did not judge a day. I said, I watched the pattern. I heard how you speak of me. I felt where I stood in your house of thoughts. Rachel leaned forward. So this is about money. You dangled a fortune and waited to see if we begged. That is ugly. Dad. No. I said. I asked for presents. You offered conditions. I asked for a seat beside me. You offered a service contract. I asked for a week of care. You offered a list of people I could pay. Ethan set his hand on my arm. He did not talk. He did not need to. I drew a breath. I met with a lawyer last week. I signed a new will. The house and half of the inheritance will go to Ethan. The rest will fund a scholarship in Lily's name for students in nursing and a larger gift to the church pantry. Rachel and Mark will receive $1 each. The lawyer said it makes the document clean. This is not punishment. It is the record of what has been true. The room went silent. Then noise filled it at once. You cannot be serious. Rachel said. You cannot reward failure. Ethan is barely stable. He plays bars. He brings soup. That is not a life plan. Mark stood. This is not binding. A court will see undue influence. A neighbor girl and the youngest son. It stinks of pressure. We can contest. You are not thinking clearly. I am clear. I said. My doctor reviewed my files. My attorney tested my memory and my grasp of numbers. I am sound. Sit down. Mark. He did not sit. He paced. His pen tapped the folder. The sound was small and mean. Rachel wiped at her eyes with a quick, hard motion. So years of help mean nothing. The rent checks. The late-night calls. The free babysitting when the boys were small. That was not love. It was love. I said. It was also endless taking. You asked for my house as collateral. You took your mother's quilt without a word. You counted on my silence as a door to walk through. Her face crumpled and then reset. So you pick him. The golden boy, the one who never grew up. You reward the easy kind of love. The showy kind. Ethan spoke. Steady and low. Do not talk about me like I am not here. I love our father. I have failed in ways I hate. But I showed up. That is the whole secret. Showing up. You can do it too. You can start now. Mark stopped pacing. He turned in a circle like a man checking exits. Fine, he said. Show us the number. How much did Uncle leave you? What are we fighting over? We are not fighting, I said. We are deciding what kind of people we want to be. The number does not matter. If it matters more than the person in this chair. You have answered my test for a 4th time. Rachel knocked her knuckles on the table. People do not eat morals. They eat food. Money is how we live. And yet money has eaten us. I said. It has chewed through the floorboards of this family until only the beams remain. Mark pointed at Lily's card on the counter. Did she help draft this? How deep is she in your decisions? She helped me eat, I said. She drove me to the lab. She wrote dates on a calendar. She asked for nothing. Her name is on a scholarship because she turned up when blood did not. Rachel stood. Her chair scraped. Enjoy your quiet house. Enjoy your blue cup. When you are gone, do not expect anyone to visit your stone. I felt the blow and let it land. I said, I love you. I said the door would stay open if you ever want a life without money first. I said I will not change the will. Mark gathered his folder. He looked at Ethan as if he could bend him with one stare. Then he left. Rachel followed. The hall was loud, and then it was still. Ethan sat beside me. He took my hand like a child and like a man. Lily stepped in from the porch. She did not speak. She brought water and set it near my hand. I cried then. Not loud. Not the kind that shakes a body. The quiet kind. The kind a father hides. Ethan held on. Lily stood by. Time moved and lost its edges. When I could breathe, I reached for the blue cup and set it in the cabinet. I wiped the table slow. I felt tired and clean. The truth had entered this house. It had broken us open. It had also set me free. The house carried the echo of that night long after Rachel and Mark's footsteps had faded. I woke the next morning to silence so deep it seemed to press against my chest. Yet there was also a lightness, as though the walls had been scrubbed clean of a long lie. I brewed coffee and sat at the table with Ethan. He had slept on the couch. His guitar leaned against the wall. His eyes were red, but steady. Dad, he said. Voice rough. I don't care about the money. I care that you don't feel alone. He had fanned 11. I nodded and reached for his hand. Words failed me. My palm against his was enough. Later, Lily came by with fresh bread. She set it on the counter and began to hum as she washed the cups. The tune was simple, but it filled the corners of the kitchen. I felt Clara in the sound, as if love had stepped back into the room. I walked through the house that afternoon, touching each piece of our life. Clara's recipe tin, the cedar chest with its quilts folded tight, the blue cup, now safe in the cabinet. These were not riches, yet they felt heavier than the inheritance in the drawer. They were proof of a life built from care, not greed. Toward evening, the phone rang. Rachel's number. I let it buzz until it stopped. Mark sent a long email. Pages of argument. Calculations. Warnings. I closed it without reading. The choice was made. And the choice was truth. That night, Ethan sang softly in the living room while Lily chopped vegetables for soup. I sat in my chair and watched them move around each other. Laughter slipping between them like threads weaving cloth. The house was alive again. I felt tears come, not sharp with anger, but heavy with release. I thought of Clara. I thought of the promise we made to protect love above all things. My heart ached with sorrow for what had broken, but it also swelled with gratitude for what had survived. As the soup simmered and Ethan's voice filled the room, I whispered to myself, family is not measured by blood alone. It is measured by who stays, who shows up, who carries the weight when it is heavy. The tears fell and did not stop. They were not the tears of defeat. They were the tears of a man who had finally seen the truth and chosen to stand by it. Winter loosened its grip and spring crept back across Maple Ridge. The snow melted into the soil, and small shoots of green pushed through the earth by the fence line. I sat on the porch most mornings with a blanket over my knees and a notebook open on my lap. The pages were filled with the tests I had written, the answers my children had given, and the truth that now lay bare. Rachel and Mark kept their distance. Letters arrived, sharp with accusation, soft with apology, then sharp again. I read them once and set them aside. They had chosen their path. The door would remain open. but I would not chase them down it. Ethan came each day, sometimes with his guitar, sometimes with silence. Both were welcome. Lily stopped by with soup, laughter, and the calm steadiness of someone who understood that showing up is more than enough. One evening, I walked with Ethan and Lily to the cemetery. We carried flowers for Clara. I stood at her stone and spoke in a low voice. The tests are done. The truth has been revealed. We lost much, but we also found what matters. Love is not a balance sheet. It is presence. It is care. It is the courage to sit in silence with another soul. The wind stirred as though she had heard me. That night, back at the house, I opened the cedar chest. I lifted the quilt Rachel had once tried to take. I spread it over Ethan's shoulders while he tuned his guitar. He looked at me, startled, then smiled. "This is hers," he said. "It smells like her. Regret it. It is yours now." I told him, "Not because of money, because you remembered what love means." "Regret it," he nodded, and tears welled in both our eyes. He began to play, a slow song that drifted through the quiet rooms. Lily hummed, the tune wrapping around us like the quilt itself. In that moment I felt Clara's presence, not as memory but as comfort. I realized the inheritance was never the money. It was the lesson etched into my bones, that love must be guarded fiercely, that presence is priceless, that truth is worth every tear. I closed the notebook for the last time. On its final page I wrote, "And 8, and for the first time in many years, I believed it."